I will officially start. And in chatting with Don before our official start, we were talking about in chapter 8 of Course in Miracles, section 7, and how it can just boggle the mind and be overwhelming. And there's a sentence here in paragraph 8 that says, "There is nothing so frustrating to a learner as a curriculum he cannot learn. His sense of adequacy suffers, and he must become depressed. Being faced with an impossible learning situation is the most depressing thing in the world. In fact, it is ultimately why the world itself is depressing." So that's a quick summary of the ego's curriculum and, why we find it just so impossible and frustrating. But then that paragraph goes on to say, the Holy Spirit's curriculum is never depressing because it is a curriculum of joy. Whenever the reaction to learning is depression, it is because the true goal of the curriculum has been lost sight of. A major part of being a Course in Miracles student is catching ourselves when we're depressed or anxious, and everything in between, when we're upset, disgruntled, slightly irritated, catching ourselves and saying, I'm defaulting to the ego as my teacher right now, and I'm willing to choose again. I'm willing to choose Jesus, Holy Spirit, internal teacher, inner teacher, spiritual guidance, whatever resonates with you. But that is the big shift in perception, is catching ourselves and noticing, am I willing, now that I've caught myself, to ask for help? Am I willing to join with spiritual guidance? Because maybe we don't want to. And it's really powerful to admit to ourselves, actually, I don't want to. And then we might choose guidance anyway, having been really honest with ourselves first. Acknowledging to ourselves that we feel cranky because the Course says that we're just little children and babies. So if we can also access that memory, being a Course student, I'm just a baby and a little kid. And no, of course, I don't want to ask for guidance right now. I want to stamp my foot and say no. If we can start to know that about ourselves, we'll take it less seriously. And a sure sign of spiritual progress is lightening up in every possible way you could think of lightening up. And I am feeling pretty lighthearted at the beginning of today's class. I had forgotten about this song. I don't know if you have heard of Carol Heffler. She's written Course in Miracles music, and I really love her. I reached out to her after I remembered this song, and she got right back to me and told me she's doing well. This is the cover of her CD. I realize that CDs are obsolete now. She's written and arranged all these songs. You can read the lyrics if you go to carolheffler.com, and they're great. This is a long song. It's 5 minutes. And this is what I suggest. As usual, we gather to recognize what we already are. And we can use this song to become antennas, to tune in to our inner teacher, to the Holy Spirit, by allowing the music to move us. So first, just listen to the music, and then let your natural rhythm start to move you ever so slightly. Or you may just breathe with the music, or you might, want to do something percussive, like clap your hands or snap your fingers. You can get up and move around. You can stay in your chair. The idea, like with the Sufi whirling dervishes, the idea is not to start moving until God moves you. And also not to do the dance that you might normally do to this rhythm, which in this case might be salsa or samba or whatever it is. Rather than falling into a conditioned mindset about what this dance is, just letting the music and the lyrics and the sound of Carol's voice enter you and be a form of guidance. So have fun with it, and we'll get back together in 5 minutes. Maybe I'll swivel my camera if I get up to dance, and I'll dance with you. Let's see.
Peace of mind is an inner matter. Start with your thoughts and move outward. Search your mind where there is fear or resentments you hold dear. As they rise up strong in your mind, let them go one at a time. This will help you through the day. When you're angry, this is what you'll say. See peace instead of this. I could see peace. I could see peace instead of this. I could see peace. Search your mind for thoughts unloving or a drama you've got running. What is real? What's a dream? Are you determined to see things differently? Don't you know there is a way? see peace. I can see peace instead of this. I could see peace. I see nothing as it is now. Though I'm here, I see the past somehow. It's a prison I can't leave. I have only to realize I'm free. So when fears rise up in my mind, I let them go one at a time. This will help me through the day. If I remember what I need to say, I could see peace instead of this. I could see peace. I could see peace instead of this. I could see peace. I could see peace instead of this. I could see peace. I could see peace instead of this. I could see peace.
Okay. Now, hopefully everybody is a little more relaxed and loosened up, and your breath is coming more freely. Music, I mean, you know this, but we don't use it often enough, is a complete game changer. It just changes your mood. And you don't always have to turn on music to make yourself change from depression to happiness, although a song like this will certainly do that. And there are others that come to mind that are just great. Like Pharrell Williams, Happy. What a song. What a song as a mood changer. And also, if you need to release grief or sadness, to put on something sad, or to play the Nat King Cole song, Nature Boy. So what does that do? It helps to switch over the use of the body. The dreamer of the dream, the collective Son of God mind that has fallen into a state of mistaken identity as an I, as an ego, as separate from God, is using the body to prove that it's separate. And by the very nature of using the body to prove that it has accomplished the impossible, that it has separated from God, Jesus in A Course in Miracles calls that an attack. So the ego forms the body as a weapon against God. And when something in us starts to wake up to there's got to be another way, whether that comes out of misery or whether it comes out of some kind of spiritual experience that then slips away and we want to get it back, or just some inner knowing. Often it's been with us since we're children. Something in us knows better than what the world and the adults have been teaching us, the institutions. When that happens, we get a message like A Course in Miracles, which tells us your inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, which ultimately we find out is us, but right now seems like something higher than us or above us or more exalted, and certainly wiser, certainly a guide. The Holy Spirit can use what the ego has made, most blatantly, the body, for a completely different purpose. When I first started to really get this, I would have a palpable, visceral experience of turning a knob on an old-fashioned stereo system. So the knob itself was very heavy and well-made. And, there'd be like a green line as you changed the channels. and it would slide across the screen. And I started to get that I was on the ego channel. I was preset. I was just on that channel, and that I could take hold of that knob and give it a swivel. And it had a delicious feeling to it. It had a weight and an authority to swiveling this knob and moving it. And it moved easily. It would just slide to a different channel. So, of course, my child's mind was like, oh my gosh, I've been on WEGO and I can just go to WGOD. So, it's just silly and corny, but it really took hold, and it helped me remember in any given circumstance, that's all I have to do. So I didn't have to have a lot of words like, please, Jesus, I hope I'm saying this right. I'm angry at this person. I don't know what to do. I have resistance. I don't understand what? Forget all of that. I could just take hold of that dial and go, psh. And what would often happen is that it would get onto the God channel, and I might feel right away, often I would feel relief. So it would just be like a little decompression, a little like, and then the dial would just start to slide back towards WEGO, just like it had a mind of its own. And I would be in that in-between place that I think we spoke about last week when we didn't quite say it like this. And I think, Bill, you might have been the one who was describing something like this, that Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And obviously, if you take a fork in the road, you split in half and it's very painful. It can't be done. It's ego or it's Holy Spirit. So when the dial starts to slide back, what we have is interference. And I started to get that this word interference has the word fear in the middle of it. And fear, to me, is what A Course in Miracles is undoing. You could just simplify it and boil it down to, we are undoing the way that we have frightened ourselves. We are finding out that we are the ones who have set up a terrifying threat that is not really true. And that for most of us, it is not undone instantly. It takes a lot of repetition. And it's not undone simply by knowing this, because we can comprehend it intellectually and still feel very driven by all kinds of subconscious and unconscious fear. So I'm just using the word subconscious to mean our personal fears that are outside of our personal awareness. And I'm using unconscious to mean the collective unconscious guilt that the Son of God mind feels when it's identified as the ego mind. So I'm using unconscious collectively. And that's why we have all of these archetypes and symbols that we all relate to and seemingly have often a shared reality that we see outside of ourselves due to the collective unconscious that we all share in that original split from God mind. And then the splitting continued and continued and continued. And so we're taking ourselves to be individuals, each of us with more and more and more specific and detailed subconscious, and then bringing things into consciousness. And the Course teaches that once we get the hang of how we're doing this specifically, we can generalize and start to understand that we're never upset for the reason we think, that it always boils down to the existential problem of believing that somehow we're separate from God and we're in grave danger, big trouble, that God is going to get us for this. So the Course is having us look at this. And in my individual classroom, I'm very drawn to how the body figures into this. Because the body is our biggest distraction and it consumes most of our time. Keeping a roof over our head, trying to stay healthy, being in relationship with other bodies, meeting our needs all day, all night long, needing to breathe, needing to drink water, needing to eat, needing to sleep, needing affection. All of it is body oriented. And undoing does not happen through avoidance. It happens through observation. The Holy Spirit is not confrontational. The Holy Spirit is not aggressive. The Holy Spirit doesn't dominate. We don't have to do any of those things, but we do need to become more and more aware through observing what seems to be going on and how we resist. Resistance is an elusive force that blocks us from recognizing what we are on a regular basis in ways that are nuanced, and we really have to get the hang of how to recognize our own resistance. So it can come in very mundane ways like fidgeting, feeling like we can't sit still, or distracting ourselves, idols, replacing, turning to the Holy Spirit with anything, eating, shopping, worrying about money, anything that seems important in a worldly sense or that seems pleasurable in a worldly sense. Yeah, name any addiction, any of it. And so another way that I became aware that it really is true that the way out of the dream is through the dream is that I had an experience of being in somebody's kitchen and I couldn't open the kitchen cabinets. And they didn't seem to have any handles on them. I'm like, how does this person get into their cupboards? And I was shown that you push the door in and it pops open. And I had a spiritual experience around that in realizing that, yeah, that's what we're doing when we're looking at the body as the Holy Spirit would have us do, that we're actually pushing into ourselves in order to pop out of ourselves. Kind of like pulling your pocket inside out, or sort of like untying a shoelace and noticing when I untie a shoelace, there's nothing there. What just happened? I untied something that seemed like it was functional and real, and there's nothing there. I find it very comforting that these very mundane things are big openings for me into a greater understanding that when I'm confronted with another person who's a challenge to me, that I do not have to make peace with their personality. I don't have to like their personality, and I don't have to like my personality. All I need to do is join with the Holy Spirit and shift over to channel God to reorient to, we all emanate from the same light. It's shifting your attention and moving out of a habitual, conditioned, taking for granted all of the interrupting that our mind is doing with everything, and somehow shifting into a flow. That's what we were doing with the song, that you're allowing the flow to find you. I went through so many movements in that music, from really like graceful and undulating to, all like elbows and kung fu, and just at different points in that song, just really letting energies unkink themselves. Because another thing that we're doing without realizing it is we're stewing beneath the surface. And we need to see that and acknowledge it. My path with psychology and psychotherapy, the one way that I feel like I've really moved through fear and have found out for myself that it's possible is in psychotherapy, going into emotions that were extremely uncomfortable. And the hardest one and the stickiest one, and the one that the ego depends on to keep us engaged with ego, is guilt. Guilt has different forms to it. It has shame, humiliation, embarrassment, discomfort. There's a spectrum of what you might feel when you're feeling guilt. And in the work that I did, one of the worst feelings that I went into was humiliation. And moving into that humiliation and feeling it, very unpleasant sensation for everybody. In my case, I'll describe it to you a little bit because I want you to be able to be honest with yourselves and recognize it in yourself. Humiliation was felt in the lower belly, and it kind of felt like maggots or worms, like creeping around, and just like no way to get them out. And just then that feeling of, get them out. And how? By being with. So two experiences that I had were, one was emotional, where when I did this role play work with my father that I described in a previous class, by going all the way into that very young regressed state and feeling what it felt like facing my father and my humiliation, it was seen somehow that I wasn't doing anything wrong. And there was nothing to be ashamed of. So there was a dropping away of beliefs around this idea of shame that was manifesting as a maggoty feeling in the body through relationship with my father, who wasn't in the room. And I felt like morning dew. There was a shift, and I felt like morning dew, innocent. And I could see that he was all caught up in his thing and that it had nothing to do with me. This is one reason why I'm so enthusiastic about psychology and psychotherapy when it's done with somebody good, somebody who holds no judgment, is open spiritually, and can allow a process like this, and even be proactive in structuring a process like this to help us move through the story that seems to be holding the individual identity in place. It's so sticky and gluey that we can't just accept the idea that the Course offers that the past is over, so the Son of God is free. There's a process in which we sort of prove to ourselves the past is over, and then you really do feel that freedom. Yeah, that's one way. There are countless ways. I just really want to support you in feeling that you have access all day long to freedom and fearlessness. It's not really that we're lessening fear. In a way, fear can never be more or less. It's full blown. Just like Jesus says in the Course that the merest hint of irritation is the same as murderous rage. because they're both elements of the dream that says that we've been attacked by God, which is really a trick that the ego is telling us that to keep us from ever discovering that we could return to God in the mind, because we're so afraid of God that we're not relaxing into the perfect oneness and safety that is our natural state. The other way that the sort of inner maggots revealed peace to me, again, it was in a psychotherapeutic setting where I was in training and working with a supervisor as the client to find out more about Gestalt therapy and how it works. And I reported a dream in front of a group of students that I dreamt that my husband had something in his intestines. It was a white thing and it wasn't good. And I was afraid. And the supervisor in the session said to me, can you be the thing that was in his intestines? That's very Gestalt work, is that you own every aspect of the dream. So I'm me in the dream, but I'm also my husband in the dream, and I'm also the chair that he's sitting in and I'm sitting in, and I can also be the thing in his intestine. So I did. I just allowed myself to pretend that I was this white thing in his intestine. And it was a single-celled thing, and it had no thoughts. And it was one of the most peaceful states I've ever experienced in my life. I just became the single-celled thing. It was completely peaceful and calm, and nothing was going on, and certainly no thinking. And so when the supervisor invited me, can you share what's going on? Because I had gotten quiet. I said, I don't want to because I feel so good right now. And he was okay with that. You know, a lot of therapists wouldn't be. But what was more amazing was I might have been crying or something, and the description of the thing was very yucky. And the students in the room got very upset on my behalf. And there was, after I came out of this state, and my supervisor was still totally okay with me, and I was totally okay, and we were very connected, and I felt this amazing spiritual experience had occurred. The class went on to have a big argument with the supervisor about how he handled the session. How he handled the session. It's just so hilarious looking back on it. So that's useful to share with you because Jesus tells us not to pay attention to the voices of the world. And there are spiritual emergences, and then there are mental health emergencies. And sometimes it's a very fine line. And how do we know? Well, sometimes we don't know. You know, sometimes we don't know. But we can turn to people who seem trustworthy, and we can turn to spirit, and it sorts itself out one way or another. Yeah, and it's very important to have the humility to say, I don't know. That keeps us open. And of course, the Course tells us that. The scariest thing is the ego to say, I do not know the thing I am, or why I'm here, or what I'm doing, something to that effect. And so it's very powerful to start dropping all of the concepts and preconceived notions that we have about anything and everything. Yeah, so I keep coming back to this chapter 8, the journey back, the body as means of communication. So the Holy Spirit is the communication link between the Son of God in a state of forgetfulness, but capable of coming to and realizing that there's another option, that there's a power of decision, a choice, and God mind. The Holy Spirit is the communication link between us lost in identity, coming back to a decision-making neutral point and returning to oneness. So you could say that first we enter into communication with the Holy Spirit. The ego is an interruption of communication. The ego is a breaking of communication. The Holy Spirit reinstates communication. And then as we develop trust, we start to commune with the Holy Spirit. So communication turns into communion, where we're together in a way that is deeper and higher than words or talking. And this is felt at first in the body. It's not just some etheric mental state. There's a relaxation in the body that takes place as well. The body is clenched and it's holding so much tension as its normal state. And we don't realize that. And in my experience, when most of my life has been spent going to healers and getting education and spiritual education, and I've never had a healer say to me, just like everybody else say me, like they'll look at me and go, oh, your right side is higher than your left side. Did you know that you're walking with one hip torqued in this direction or that? And I'm like, no, oh my God. They don't say to me, yeah, everybody's body is uneven. Nobody has perfectly even facial features or shoulders or anything. People don't normalize and comfort and create sameness. It tends to be, you've got a problem and I'm going to fix it. Your doctor, your healer, your whoever, I would want to fix your problem and love you by doing that and feel really good about myself in that way. All of that is part of the big mistake. Yeah. So it's a huge relief to find out that the body can be used for another purpose, and that little by little we can discover pockets of tension. And they're not really a problem, but you feel much better without them. They seem like a problem because they're causing all kinds of physical distress, headaches, stomach aches, back problems, all of it. And don't judge yourself for that. The body was made to distract us. So whether you have a perfect body or you're a bodybuilder or you're gorgeous or you're not, none of it matters, because health is in the mind. The body is just a symbol of sickness. And the sickness is that we experimented with separating from God and told ourselves that that was a terrible thing to do and we were going to be punished for it. In other words, we took that idea seriously. We remembered not to laugh at the tiny mad idea that we could accomplish separation from God. We can't force ourselves to laugh if we're not finding things funny, but we can work with the breath and work with the muscles and start to realize that this container doesn't just demand addressing physical health, which is perfectly fine. Absolutely do that. But what you can really do is tune into the God channel and start to experience the new meaning of your body, the new purpose of your body as an antenna tuning in to what you really are and finding out that a vibration or light, like the light behind Jesus in the square, or a hum or a buzz or a vision, just a sense of well-being, a click into something natural that suddenly makes all the sense in the world, an elevating sense of knowing what's real and what isn't. I remember as a young child in my living room looking at some people there. I think it was some family members and maybe visitors. And I suddenly had this experience of, who are these people? What is this? Just this isn't right. This isn't real to me. And then we forget those things. So start collecting those things as reminders to reinforce for yourself. I know what I know. Jesus tells me in this whole book, don't tell me that you can't learn what I'm teaching you here, which is an unlearning of everything you've taught yourself. Look at the complex immensity of what you've taught yourself. All of these galaxies, all of the stars, how everything in the world and in astronomy is the past. We're looking at, that's 14 billion years away, from now. The complexity of the body. Some people on other paths think the body is a miracle. But really, on this path, the body is a ridiculously complicated, convoluted tube, that we put food in one end and we poop it out the other. And it's just like, are you kidding me? Why do we have to do it that way? We made up the dream. Yeah. So, in the body as a means of communication, page 151, by the way, in the second and third editions of A Course in Miracles in the text. It's chapter 8, The Journey Back. In paragraph 2, it says, remember that the Holy Spirit interprets the body only as a means of communication. Write that down and carry it around with you. Wait a minute, I'm getting upset, but wait a minute. The Holy Spirit interprets the body only as a means of communication. I could, in this moment, interrupt whatever I'm upset about and tune into communication. Being the communication link between God and his separated sons, the Holy Spirit interprets everything you have made in the light of what he is. There's the light behind Jesus. This light is running all through A Course in Miracles. We are the great rays streaming from God light. We retain that spark, all of us. We all come from the light. Whatever the personality is doing, whatever the behavior is, whatever the belief systems are, we all come from the same light. And that light is communication. The ego separates through the body. The Holy Spirit reaches through the body to others. Because if we tune into the light and we're willing to have the light stream through us, that's the miracle of healing, being enlightened. Then light, the nature of light is that it just streams through us. It radiates from us. We're not doing anything now. That's why we need do nothing, but not to interfere. Right now, we're told you do not perceive your brothers as the Holy Spirit does, because you do not regard bodies solely as a means of joining minds and uniting them with yours and mine. So Jesus is talking to the one decision maker, the collective Son of God mind that's taken itself to be the ego, but we're turning to Jesus for something else, and Jesus is saying, yeah, decision maker, you are not perceiving your brothers as the Holy Spirit does, as light, because right now you're not regarding bodies as only as a means of joining minds. We're taking the fork in the road. We've got one foot in the world and one foot in Jesus's camp. And we're terrified. We're frozen there. We're scared to pick up the foot that's in the world and set it down on the side with Jesus. And he talks to us so personally. He says, as a means of joining minds and uniting minds with yours, your mind, Son of God, which is already joined, and mine. He's right there. JC is right there saying, and you'll be joining minds with me. And I'm right here. I like saying this out loud because it feels so true inside of me when I say it to you, and I need to hear it too. The more that we remember not to forget, there's that whole section somewhere in the course, there's a few of them about selective remembering and remembering to forget and forgetting to remember. Well, we want to remember that we can use the body as a means of joining minds. And then we have a spiritual experience. It could be anything. It could be, it's usually for me, that something that felt painful or lacking drops away. And so it's not, sometimes it's not immediately recognizable. Some weight or some dread that I've been living with chronically drops away. And then it takes a while for me to realize, oh, this anxiety that precedes everything I do isn't there anymore. You want to notice that for yourself. And then literally, I breathe easier. Even saying it to you, I breathe easier. And for me, breathing, I keep getting the message that just use the breath as the Holy Spirit. Just let it cultivate intimate connection and communion with the inner teacher, which is nearer than our very breath. But start with the breath. In yoga and other things, people talk about diaphragmatic breathing, and I've been wondering about that for years and years and years. Nobody's really explained it fully to me, and recently I feel like I understand it better. If I'm getting this right, the diaphragm is a muscle around the bottom of the rib cage, kind of like a belt circling your rib cage between your lungs and your intestines. And when we inhale, the lungs expand and fill with air, and that pushes the muscle of the diaphragm down. And when we exhale, it releases the diaphragm muscle, and so the diaphragm rises up. That seems all very counterintuitive to me. But actually, physically, I think that's what's happening. So when people talk about a 3-part breath, that on the inhale, you want to fill your belly and then your chest and then up to your collarbones. And in my Sufi heart rhythm meditation training, they talk about the body as a balloon and the heart, heightening through the crown and the depth of the heart, all the way into the earth, and that you fill your rib cage, not just up into the sides, but in the back also. So it becomes 3-dimensional. I mention it just to give you a sense of how fully your lungs can expand and how large breathing can be. And then when you're really paying attention to that breathing, it is noticed that it's happening beyond the body. It's not just inside your lungs. There's something energetic going on that's bigger than the outline of your form. And if you let your hands play with each other, you might experience your breathing in that way, sort of like you're an accordion. I start to feel a very pleasant pressure that is pushing my hands apart. I mean, I can bring them right back together, but if I allow myself to sense what's between the hands, it feels good. So, people talk about making the energy ball. These are all ways to relate to your body that have to do with spiritual attunement, no matter what kind of physical health you're in. You can still check in with yourself, develop a relationship with your breath. The breath can feel very pleasurable. It can dance inside you. It's almost vaporous or something. I'm not very self-disciplined. I just do what I like to do. I've gotten, down on myself for that. I should be a more disciplined meditator, blah, blah, blah. But even so, I think my practice, my most powerful, consistent practice is catching myself when I'm upset and turning to the Holy Spirit. That's it. And then paying attention to the breath is something that I keep coming back to as part of that way of being. And then, of course, you guys, I asked for a very simple prayer that I could not ignore, prayer/meditation for me. And I was given, find the origin of your smile and you will find your source, which I offer to all of you. Use anything that I'm doing for yourselves, and also notice for yourself anything that you're being given that's easy. I mean, what is meditation? It's just moving into your natural state. There are all kinds of meditation exercises and practices, but the ultimate goal of meditation is to recognize yourself as what you are. And then the only reason that you'd want to stay in meditation is because that's what you are. And yeah, you want to know yourself, know thyself. That's how we'll be healed. That's how our lives will be meaningful while we're still operating within the dream. That's how we'll offer love and healing to the world, even though ultimately that does not matter, because the world will evaporate just like a dream does in the morning. But while you have a feeling that you want to contribute in a worldly way, the more that you're in touch with your breath and asking the Holy Spirit to use your body for communication and to use your sensory perceptors for you, you'll be guided one way or another. It means a lot to me that we don't have to like each other. We don't have to pretend to ourselves that we're going to find a way to make somebody else's annoying habits okay with us. We don't have to find people endearing. We don't. we have to see the light. We have to see through the personality, see our own light, and start to feel the amusement that comes with all the crazy things that humans do in the most minor ways and the most major ways, and know that there's nothing to fear because this is not our home. We are not home here. And we deserve to come out of this delusional state and expand into the grandeur that we are. I mean, when you think of the beauty in the world or the things that you love most, what we are is a gazillion times beyond that. That's a tiny taste of what's in store if we stop scaring ourselves. Yeah. You know, I've mentioned that if I'm doing a meditation, they say go to your happy place, and then I would feel so lonely and sad because my happy place, first of all, I couldn't find one, and then if I tried to do like a Caribbean island, I would feel horribly lonely and compare myself. Everybody else is in their happy place and they're happy, but for me, a happy place is a sad place, and I'm a horrible failure. And then I just realized my happy place is just anywhere where a cat is purring in my lap. That's it. Cat purring in my lap, that's a happy place for me. And another one is gliding my feet on a wooden floor. I must have had past lives as a dancer. I cannot not dance on a wooden floor. If I'm in a museum or a restaurant, you know, inappropriate places, I still have to do a few little gliding dance steps as I move through that space, and tears will come to my eyes. So they're good tears. They're alive tears. We want to follow the trail of whatever it is that makes us feel alive. I like the book, The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. I believe it's called The Afterlife of Billy Fingers, where he's sort of a bad boy. He's in his 50s when he dies, I think, or early 60s, and dies in a violent way. And then he starts communicating with his sister, who's a skeptic, but a meditator. Meditation really does help open the mind. It's not the only way. And there's moving meditation and chanting and, you know, different forms of more active meditation if you're not one to just sit. But in my experience, all the spiritual teachers I've heard who said, you know, I meditated for 20 years, then I awakened, and then I realized, oh, you don't need to meditate to awaken. I actually challenge them. And I think that, yeah, it's like soaking beans overnight. Like you needed to soak in that meditation to soften the defenses in order to get that mind available for what seemed like an overnight sensation, you know, a 20-year overnight sensation, 20 years of hard work, and then you're discovered. So she was a meditator. And so she was contacted by her brother. And I mean, at first she thought she was losing it, or she discounted it. Like, no, that couldn't have been real. But I like that book because Billy Fingers does a really good job of describing his experience of after the body drops away, the way that he's elevating and transitioning through dimensions until it's really hard for him to talk anymore or communicate in language. And it's like he's just expanding and dissolving back into pure being. And with that kind of communication, because it's more than information, I really absorbed that. And I read that book a couple of times. It really impacted how I feel when my loved ones have passed away. My father, my Aussie cat, my gatita. Yeah. Yeah. There's an ongoing heart pulsation. I'm going to use the word pulsation. It feels magnetic. Um, and it's very pleasant. It's not like gravity. Gravity can be pleasant too. Feeling grounded is a good feeling, but gravity pulls us. It keeps us here. It's part of the clench. And I feel like magnetism is lifting us out. It's drawing us up. So that's how I'm using those words. And the sense of loss, it is very diminished by this greater sense of connection or communion, constant, that these loved ones are not gone. Yes, their form is gone. And yes, I can miss their form. I don't usually, because I've told you, out of sight, out of mind tends to work for me. But yeah, I can feel a kind of sweet longing. And I know the pain of grief. It's beyond description. It's crippling. I know that pain from childhood, actually, is more when I felt that kind of completely debilitating grief. I'm just assuring you that can be lived through. And so many movies and songs romanticize that kind of attachment. And it ultimately doesn't serve us at all. And it's not honorable either, to just be so attached to a person or a thing or a place or a pet that that love is unable to flow. There is a book called Flow, maybe by a Czechoslovakian guy. I don't remember his name and it's hard to spell. I haven't read that book, but I like the title. I've heard it's good. Flow. But I'm all about flow, rhythm and flow, connecting with the flow of your own breath, going at your own rhythm, not being influenced by the world, building up your relationship with the Holy Spirit so that you can stay there despite what the world is pushing at you. It doesn't mean you're not moving. It doesn't mean you're not taking care of business. When I met Ken Wapnick initially, I thought he had the perfect life. I said to him, your whole day is just spent in spirituality. All you do is A Course in Miracles. And he just laughed. He said, what do you mean? I'm doing all this administrative stuff and it's all running a business. And, just because it's about A Course in Miracles, it doesn't mean that it's spiritual. He was just Ken was irreverent and, joking and definitely coming from that equality of love. I felt like I saw Ken hug so many people in these big bear hugs, and myself included, and such a warm welcome. Very similar to the way Muji is very warm and hugs people, but a completely different personality. And but the sameness of it, the equality, was notable, and also the feeling that that hug was very fully given. So That's where I'm encouraging us to live from the love that is the same no matter who we encounter, because love is love. Yeah. I did not read from the course that much. Do you guys want to ask anything or share how it is for you or hear another song or Chaz?
I just wanted to mention that Billy Fingers is on Audible. That's where I found it. It was really helpful. Thank you.
Oh, good to know. Or you know what's nice also is just vibing together quietly. Hmm. I feel like maybe we should listen to Nature Boy. Let's listen to Nature Boy. I can't get enough of this song and the way Nat King Cole sings it. You guys know I can't get enough of it. So let's absorb it like sponges.
There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy. They say he wandered very far, over land and sea. A little shy and sad of eye, but very wise was he. And then one day, a magic day, he passed my way. And while we spoke of many things, fools and kings, this he said to me: the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return.
Is that not perfection? Oh my God. He's Sufi gazing. If you gaze into his eyes, he's Sufi gazing. If you want to be swallowed by him, you can just go right into his mouth, like into the whale's mouth in a good way. This time I felt like I was the piano and he was playing the keys. I was just like, oh my God, there is something so transcendent about him singing that song and the trio and those other two musicians and mm, and the message of the song. Okay, darlings, I think that's it for today. See you next week.